All right, guys, what we're going to be doing today, we have the transmission off of this 6.5 liter diesel engine, and we're going to take advantage of having that out of the way to do some maintenance on the engine today as well. So what we're after today is the rear main seal right behind the flex plate here, so we can already see some residual oil through these holes here. We're pretty sure this is what we're dealing with this drip that we've had running down the back of the oil pan for a while. It's not anything that hits the driveway, but there's obviously something here. Even if you didn't have anything, my advice is when you got the transmission off for any reason, take advantage of the fact that you do and go ahead and change this seal out. So I'm going to mark the side of this that is facing out just so we make sure we put it back on correctly. Now what you're going to notice, I'll try to show it on this one, you don't have a lot of clearance. Very little clearance if we zoom in there, depending on the manufacturer of your socket, your impact socket. So you may have to try a couple of different ones. You may even have to go to a non-impact socket, just depending on the thickness of the wall of the socket and whether it's going to fit in there. So we're going to get some eyes and ears, and we're going to zip these guys off. Some of this stuff out of the way here. Gonna need a little bit of a bigger dead blow hammer, guys. She is on there tight. You don't want to hit too hard because you don't want to damage anything. You just want to kind of work the corrosion loose. She's flexing a little bit. What I'm going to do, guys, I'm going to get back in here and get some penetrating fluid back behind where the flex plate touches the crankshaft so we can help work this corrosion loose. Just want to be patient, guys. Definitely don't want to break it, especially as old as it is. Just going to let that fluid penetrate in there for a little bit, especially around this center piece, and then we'll give it another shot. We've just been patiently working this guy, letting the penetrating fluid try to do its job. We just got a lot of corrosion between the flex plate and the crankshaft. We just have to work it off. So just gently rocking it back and forth until we can get it all the way off. There we go. The key thing here is just to be gentle with it because, you know, it can break. Now, one of the things we're going to do now is we're going to try and inspect whether we do have any cracks in this flex plate. Your best tool for that is a fingernail. You know, just going all the way around, just making sure that she's good and we don't have to replace her. All right, set this down now the way. Here's the back of our crankshaft. There's our seal. So we don't have anything leaking up here or here. We've got something that's leaking around this freeze plug, and that might be coolant. And then we've got all this down here. So, you know, I would have thought maybe the oil pan, but the fact that it's up above tells us that this is a rear main seal that needs to be replaced. So we're going to have to remove that. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to clean up all this old stuff because I don't want to be spraying a solvent on here after we put the new main seal in. So let's get all this cleaned up and then we'll go about removing it. All right, guys, while we're waiting for the solvent fumes to dissipate from cleaning, let's take a look at the service manual and review the procedure that we're doing. Now, we're working on a 99 6.5 liter diesel. 98 was the last year, second edition of the hard copy manual, so it covers 99 as well. When they talk about removing the flywheel, you can see it's not really a whole lot given. Just take off the bolts, remove the outer retainer if equipped. We did not have this outer retainer type. And again, you know, flywheel, they're using that interchangeably with flex plate because you can see both the flywheel and the flex plate shown here, manual transmission and automatic. So that's all they tell you for that. As far as taking the seal off, what they tell you about that is remove the rear seal using a small screwdriver and don't reuse the seal, toss it, and they just show you that, right? So they don't really give you a whole lot of information. But when you get to the installation piece, they tell you about a special tool that's needed to put this on. They tell you to make sure that the crankshaft has engine oil on its sealing surface, that you coat the lip of the new seal with engine oil or grease. Make sure you don't scratch or nick it on the ends, and then you install it with the spring cavity facing in using this J39084. Now that's the GM, Chevrolet, and GMC service manual. Here's a page out of the AM General manual too. Same engine that was used on the Hummer H1 and the Humvees. So in this case, they talk about not much more detail, right? Removing the transmission, transfer case, removing the flywheel, like just a one-liner. And they just show basically the same picture we saw in the General Motors one. Then they tell you again, using a small screwdriver or a seal puller, remove the old seal, clean up the old sealant and oil buildup, lightly coat the crankshaft inner lip with engine oil, lube the inside diameter of the seal, position the seal on the crankshaft with the lip seal towards the block, ensure the seal lip, the seal lip towards the block, ensure the seal lip doesn't flip as you put it in. And again, use the J39084 on the crankshaft to press the seal into the cavity in the block, install the flywheel or flex plate back on the crankshaft, and they tell you to torque it to 66 foot-pounds in the AM General manual. And then they give you this picture, which is identical to the General Motors picture with just some extra annotated notes on it. They do give you this handy close-up view, though, where they show you here's your block, here's your crankshaft protruding, here's the seal, and they're showing you that that seal should be sitting flush with the block and bearing cap. So that's a handy picture that the General Motors guys didn't bother to provide. Anyway, so let's go back down and let's go about getting this guy removed. I doubt the small screwdriver technique that both these manufacturers suggest is going to work after 20 some odd years, given how rusty the the flex plate was. We'll probably go the method of drilling a small hole in there so that we can get some type of tool into the actual seal and lever it out that way. Taking a look at putting the flywheel back on, not much more information than AM General provided. However, interesting, a difference in 1 foot-pound of torque, where General Motors recommending 65 foot-pounds and AM General recommending 66 for the same exact engine with the same exact crankshaft, flywheel, and seal and all. So we're going to go with the GM 65 because it is a GM. Maybe there was a particular reason this was a 1 foot-pound difference. All right, guys, we've got all this cleaned up around the lip of the oil pan and the mating surface here, also around the corners here and the corners here. We also went ahead and just kind of cleaned up all around the outer edge of this. Now, I left it so you can see, if you zoom in here, we can see that there's some shiny wetness on this side of the seal. And this is probably one of the areas where the seal has failed. It's hard to say, right? Because it could be something dripping down from this plug that we obviously have some sort of a leak going on there. But when you run a rag around it, it's dark and it appears to be engine oil. We also have that same kind of look right down here at the bottom as we were cleaning. So now with this all cleaned up, we'll be able to ascertain, was it just the seal or was it the seal plus this rear additional seal that's below the oil pan, right? So if you take the oil pan off, there's a seal right between the oil pan and the back of the block here as well, but we're only going to change out the main seal here. Now, the service manuals, as we showed earlier, would have wanted you to kind of come in here with a small flat-bladed screwdriver, kind of tap that in there and wedge this guy out. And I really just don't like that technique, number one, because I know this seal is going to be in there really tight, and we're going to end up maybe gouging something, and every little gouge becomes a little valley that oil can travel through. So we're just going to go the easier route of putting a hole right in the middle of the seal so that we can then insert a tool and lever it out that way. Now let me show you the seal we're going to be replacing so you can get an idea for why we're taking that technique. So the seal we're going to be putting on there is a GM 235 03969. So that's the current seal that's still used to service this engine, right? And if we take a look at the other side, you can see there's like some red material in here. The inside diameter of the seal comes pre-greased from General Motors. So we won't need to do anything on the inside. We'll just run oil on the outside diameter the way the service manual recommends. This is the outward facing side of the seal. And if we get a view through something clear in this package, the inside here, if you zoom in here and I can get it without too much glare, is hollow. All right, where there's a spring inside here. And so this lip is flexible here against the crankshaft, and then it's metal against the outside diameter. And what we're going to be doing is putting a drill hole right through the top of that and taking note of how wide it is so that we don't go too far in, right? So we're just going to be going about that far into the old seal here so that we can get a tool in there. All right, so let's get to it. Go ahead and get your goggles on. You're going to be having a lot of debris potentially coming down. And because you're under the vehicle, probably want to get your ear protection as well. Now we're going to chew this rubber off first. So our bit doesn't walk on us. That's it. We're through. Now we're just going to get some of this metal debris out of here. And what I'm first going to try and do is I'm going to try just to get it out with a seal puller wedged into that hole. If that doesn't work, we're going to put a screw in there. Yeah, there was no way this was going to come out with a screwdriver. She's in there tight, but she comes out with a seal puller. All right. All right, so there's our old one. You can see that's where we drilled through the top, so we didn't cause any damage on anything. Now we're going to again do some cleaning. We're going to want to go inside here, clean up any residual oil. Most importantly, we want to get any of those metal filings from the drilling operation out of here. So let me take care of that, and we'll come back and we'll install our new seal. All right, guys, we're going to take some 15W40 motor oil, and we're going to grab a cleaner rag. Starting to get a short supply of actual clean rags. And we're going to run this guy all the way around the perimeter. So this is going to give us a light oil coating on the outside diameter and the inside diameter. And we're going to take our new seal. Carefully open the package without distorting it. And this is the part where some people are going to not like what I'm doing here, but I'm going to tell you something, guys. When you do your own repair work, especially something like this where it's a huge amount of labor involved to yank the transmission and get access to something like this, take the money you saved on the labor and get the right tool. This is one of those cases where having that special tool, I think, is just a good idea. This is that J39084 tool that you see in the AM General and the GM service manuals. Just going to get this guy unlocked up here so that we can get him into position. So what we're going to do with this guy is we're going to take our seal, and we're going to make sure, now you can see how it's hollow on one side and flat on the side we drilled through. And you can see how there's a bunch of spots of grease that the factory put on the inside. We're going to mount this seal on this tool. And then we're going to mount this tool on the crankshaft. Actually, before we do that, I almost forgot, we're going to want to run some oil around the outside diameter of this seal. So we're going to run a light coat of oil all around the outside diameter of this seal. That'll help with it going in, seating properly. All right, now that we got that in place, now we're going to put this tool up on the crankshaft. And we're going to locate these screws into two of the holes that the flex plate mounting bolts went into. Just going to get them started first by hand, and then I'm going to snug them up with a screwdriver. And we're going to kind of try and do this evenly on both sides. Until she bottoms out. And now that that's in place, all you do to install the seal is turn this big wing nut. And if we get the camera at a little bit of an angle and we zoom in, what we'll see as we crank this down is we'll see this lip of this tool approaching the engine. And it's just pushing the seal into position. Now you get about halfway down, you'll get some resistance. And as it gets right to the seating point, you'll get a lot of resistance. And then she'll bottom out. At that point, when she's bottomed out, back off the tension a little bit, and then we can unscrew it. Get both these screws off. And voila, one installed rear main seal. Now, like I said, the reason for a tool like this, and I'll show you some dimensions if you want to try to fabricate something, but the reason we want to use a tool like this is it gets it done in one shot. We're just going to get some of the residual oil off that we use to lubricate the outside diameter and that we use to lubricate the tool. You get it done in one shot. One of the things we can take a look at here, we zoom in, we can see that the inner lip seal, right, is not bent, right? You want to see that this thing is flared out onto the crankshaft surface, and we can see that the tool helps ensure that is the case. Of course, I'll go around it with a mirror on the top part that I can't see right here laying down on the ground, but we'll make sure that's the case. But it's kind of hard for that to go wrong with this special tool. And even though the seal has got some kind of ridging to it, just like we noticed in the AM General version of the manual, we can see that this is level with this sealing surface of the engine block. So let me go show you a close-up of this tool in case you want to see how you might fabricate something like this yourself. But that's it for the job. We're now ready to put our transmission back on. Well, we're going to have to inspect what's going on with this freeze plug up here, but we are done with this rear main seal leak. And now that we've got all this cleaned up, we'll be able to keep an eye on to see if that was it, or if we continue to see some leaks, then we know we need to also, at a later date, change out this oil pan. And if we do that, I'll show that video as well. So let's go take a look at the tool. All right, guys, so just taking a close-up view and zooming in, just want to show you the safety of this approach that I did. So you can be sure you're not drilling in too far. And by coming in with a tool like a seal puller, which is what we did here, the seal puller is going to be up against the side of the steel on the inside piece and up against the steel on the top, right? And it's going to be insulated from the crankshaft by the lip seal, the rubber lip seal here. So that's why I prefer this technique. If you don't have a seal puller, and this is nothing special, it's an old Craftsman seal puller, there's a lot of them out there, a lot of different brands, then you can put a screw through the hole that you made, and you can try to lever it out with a pair of pliers, but I prefer this method. So just showing you a close-up view on this and why it works. All right, guys, let's take a closer look at our J39084 rear main seal installer for the 6.5 liter diesels. So you can see there's these two spring-loaded screws in here that go into any two of the holes in the crankshaft at the rear that the bolts would normally go into. And the outer shell of this thing is 5 3/4 inches on the nose. And the inner piece is 4 1/2 inches on the nose. And as you turn this in one direction, the direction that you'd use to load the seal, it extends this far away, which is just shy of 1/4. And again, just a better view of that 4 1/2. And so when you've got the inner lip on this inner piece, and then the outer piece, which, let's see, I'll give you a width of that. The outer piece width is 5/8. As you crank this guy down, you see what's happening is the outer piece is going on this screw, pushing the seal off the inner ring and into the cavity between the crankshaft and the block. And at some point, it'll bottom out, even if it doesn't bottom out in the block, right? So it bottoms out right about there. But obviously, it'll bottom out a lot sooner going into the block. And that's it, right? So if you are careful and you had crafted something of similar sizes to this, then you don't necessarily need a tool like this. A tool like this, I'll put a link in the description. A tool like this will run you on eBay probably about $60 to $70 used. This I think I bought this a while ago. I think I paid probably $75, but I bought it brand new. And even that was dealer closeout kind of a thing. The amount of money you're saving on labor, put it into the right tools so that you don't have to do the job more than once. That's my advice. Same thing with parts, right? Put genuine GM parts on there rather than some kind of aftermarket stuff, which is typically garbage. And this way you won't have to do it more than once. All right, guys, we've got this cleaned up. It's time to go after this leaking camshaft bore plug hole cover. Now, normally what you're supposed to do is disassemble the engine, pull the camshaft, and knock this out from the inside to fix this kind of a leak. We're going to try to avoid all that. So you're going to need to check how big your balls are for what you're going to do here, if you're going to follow what I'm doing. So the plan here is to take advantage of the fact that the other side of the camshaft looks something like this. And there's an indentation here for the machining when the camshaft was being created and the lobes were being cut. There's an indentation on the back here where this was held, and we're going to take advantage of that indentation to drill a hole in the middle of this using a Dremel tool with one of these adjustable shrouds. Now, this is not what this is intended for, right? This is intended to be used with a cutting blade to cut drywall. I think it's going to work out just fine for this purpose, because that's going to allow me to, number one, get it centered in the middle of this cover, and number two, control how far and how fast we drill into here, right? And now we're also going to walk up the bits. So we're going to start with it's like a 3/32, and we'll eventually walk up to a 1/8. And then what we're going to do is we're going to put a bolt in here, and we're going to try to pull it out just like we're pulling a nail. So that's going to be our first attempt. So let's see how we do. All right, guys, we're about to be committed. All right, that's exactly why I started it very lightly. It's going to walk on us a little bit. So I'm going to give it a little punch first. All right, guys. I'm just going to first come in here and try to get a rough idea of the center. Then we're going to give it a little punch. We're going to verify that that is our center. Yep. Never fails that one of the flashlight magnets decides to give out, even on a block of cast iron. Okay, let's try this again. All right, we're just going to walk it up very gently. So that's the technique, guys. We're going to walk this through very slowly, very, very slowly, just until we get through the cap. Then we're going to walk it up to the next size bit and the next size bit. So I'm going to walk through that off camera, and we'll come back when we're ready to try the bolt. All right, guys, just a progress check of where we're at here. So we've just started with the 1/8 size bit. We still haven't penetrated the cap, so we're going to try and do that now. It's adjustable bit. All right, so you guys can see we're still just slowly working our way through the cap. So what you want to do on this kind of a job is go very, very slow. All right, guys, we've broken through. We're going to take this little pick here, and we're going to see how much clearance we've got. All right, so the back of the camshaft is about a 1/2 inch behind the cap. So that's how much room we have to work with. So we're going to start with a coarse thread screw like this, a self-tapping type screw. Might have to go get like a socket or something to bear down on this enough. We'll see. We want it to be kind of a snug, tight fit so that it'll hold on when we try to pull it out. All right, let's give that a shot. So I'm literally going to try and take it out like a nail if I can. I don't know if this will be the tool I end up using, but this is the tool we'll start with. Let's see what we get with this. Well, she's definitely deforming. I don't know if you guys can tell that in the picture, but she came up on the edge and she bowed up in the middle. So this is the technique that'll work. So what we'll do is we'll just step this up now to a larger bolt, and we'll keep doing the same thing until we have some progress. So I'll bring you guys back when we see something new. All right, guys, I'm going to give this one bolt a little bit more before I switch. Actually, I decided to try a different tool before I go to the next size bolt. She's definitely deforming. She's definitely moving a little bit, but not enough yet. All right, so I'll just keep giving you guys progress checks as we go. All right, guys, we went with the largest bolt that we had here. We got it level with the block before it gave way. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take this punch bar and kind of open this up and see if we can start to prise this guy out this way. And you can see the camshaft in there. Just trying to make sure that we don't touch that. But I think we'll be able to now use this guy to continue the job. There we go. All right, so that leaky guy is off. And our picture was correct. As you can see, we did not damage anything. So now we're going to clean this out. Going to get a magnet in here, make sure we don't have any metal filings, clean it out, and then we'll install the replacement. All right, guys, under the camshaft bearing installation instructions for the service manual, if we go to the very end, we'll see it talking about installing a new rear camshaft plug. Use sealer 12345 or equivalent. Install the plug flush or to a maximum of 0.8 millimeters or 0.3 inches deep, right? That's the only instructions you get. Now, that particular part number, 12345 is just a blue thread locker. So I'm not sure that's all I want to put on there. When we go back underneath, I'll show you that what was on there was a really hard material, kind of like that Indian head shellac kind of gasket material. What I'm probably going to use is Permatex Aviation Forma gasket that stays soft. I might put this on the inside bore and then a little bit of this on the outside edge. I just don't ever want to come in here and do this again. Now the part we're going to be replacing it with is going to be a GM 399-9200. Right, so that is our new camshaft cover plug. It's in a little bag that says made in Canada. The sticker is not actually on the metal, right, so we don't have to worry about that being inside. This is for the 6.2, the 6.5, both diesels. I believe it also fits the Vortex 7.4 liter as well as some older 6.0 and 7.0 liter engines. All the big block type stuff from GM takes this particular plug. All right, let's continue. All right, guys, I took all this old sealant off. You can see one little piece right here. It's kind of a really hard shellac kind of material. It just chips off. Reminds me of that Indian head type of gasket sealant. And maybe that's what it is. I don't know. But I left that in there just so you can see. You want to go around with a plastic tool. Do not use a metal tool, or you could cut grooves into this and defeat the whole purpose of doing this repair. End up still with a leak. So I'm going to go ahead and get that last piece out, and then we'll install the new plug. All right, guys. I took that off. What you want to do with the magnet, you want to go inside each of these crevices. Make sure you got no metal filings from the drilling procedure. Now, we had none inside, but we did have some down here on the bottom. So you want to make sure you take a mirror and that you don't have anything like that in here, right? I already done it. I'm just kind of showing you what I did. Now, we took a rag with some brake clean and we cleaned up around here to get all this old sealant off and to get the surface ready for the new sealant. But we also have removed all of the oil from the camshaft. And since it's probably going to be a week before we get the trans back in here, just to avoid some surface rust, we're going to recoat the camshaft with clean motor oil. And again, this is just to avoid surface rust. Now, does that matter? And maybe, maybe not. But it only takes a minute to do. Now what we're going to do is we're going to reseal. And what we're going to do the resealing is we're going to put the Permatex Forma gasket on the bottom. Now, this is going to sound, kind of unorthodox, and it's not what the service manual said, right? The service manual said just put Loctite on there, basically. But I'm not comfortable doing that alone, and I don't want to come in here again for a very long time. So we're going to put this number 3 right around the bottom edge. And the sides. Just be careful that you're not touching the oil we just put up there, and that you're not getting it up on the camshaft bearing. Then we're going to open up our new plug, which is going to be double bagged from the factory in Canada. And for this, we're going to use the recommended sealant that we saw earlier. Now you're going to see it running down the back. Don't worry about that. I'm going to clean that up in a minute. I'm just getting enough on here that I can run it all the way around. Clean that up right there. So yeah, we've got this kind of Frankenstein concoction here. But I'm feeling that's the right thing to do. All right, I'm just going to take a little piece of aluminum bar here so I get a nice even drive. Get a little bit of a better position. All right, so that's perfectly flush. Now what we're going to elect to do is we're going to elect to seat it that extra 0.8 of a millimeter, and what I'm going to do for that is I'm going to put a seal driver up here. All right, guys, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to come in here with the seal driver in this direction with a 60 and a 57, and we're just going to make sure it's perfectly flat. Just because, you know, we used that piece of bar just to get it in initially, but we want to make sure that it's perfectly flat before we go any further. And then we're going to reverse it. Turn it the other way around. All right, now we've got it reversed, 57 and 60. And we just want to barely tap this, just barely tap this. Because remember, 0.8 of a millimeter is as far as we want to go. And then we can take our caliper and we can see what we've got. So right there we've got 0.37. And so we're just going to keep tapping it in until we get approximately to 0.8. We don't want to go over. All right, guys, we've tapped around here for a little while now. I'm going to stay at this 0.72. Actually, one side's a little 0.74, one side's 0.72. That's close enough. Let's put a fork in it and move on to the... Under the service manual, engine flywheel, clean and inspect, this would apply to the flex plate as well. For whatever reason, they don't have a separate section on flex plate, but basically we're going to clean with a solvent, brake clean in our case, blow dry it, and then we're going to check to make sure that nothing is loose. There's some welded on weights, for example. We want to make sure there's no cracks, no pitting on the manual transmission. We don't have to worry about that on a flex plate, so they can tell you right here that they're kind of throwing this flex plate information in here together. We can skip this on a manual. We can skip this on a manual. Stress cracks. We talked about stress cracks when we first took it off, but we're going to give another look after we get it cleaned off. Check to make sure the ring gear on the outside edge has not come unwelded. And, don't repair anything. If anything's damaged, you're going to have to replace it. That's it. We'll go ahead and wire brush the inside corrosion off and get it reinstalled. All right, guys, last thing we have here. So we've wire wheeled our crankshaft a little bit, and we've sprayed some protection on it, and we've wire wheeled the flex plate on this side, the mating surface side, and we've sprayed some protection on it as well. And so now we're going to go ahead and mount this back up. You see now it goes on and off really easy with all that corrosion off of there. Going to hand start our bolts. Now a couple of these bolts got boogered up. Take them off, and I'm going to replace those as well, and I'll show you the part number for these particular bolts. You know, fun fact on these bolts is they are the same GM part number ever since they were originally introduced back in 1957. They originally were used to secure the flex plate for the 1957 Chevrolet Turbo Glide transmission, of all things. And so they're not metric. They are SAE 11/16 size. So you can see here, this one, when I first tried to put a metric socket on it by accident, kind of boogered up one of the flats. So we're going to go ahead and replace that with one of our 372-7207 bolts. And there's no thread sealant or anything called for in the service manual either. So you won't see me put that on here either. And we got one other one here on our yellow mark that needs to be replaced. And then we're ready to drive them down. And again, guys, they're 11/16. I'm going to go ahead and just snug them up with a regular ratchet wrench, and then I'll go over the torque value in a minute. All right, guys, I ended up changing one more of these bolts out. A couple of points before we wrap up. You got a dowel pin here that helps you line the flex plate in the correct position. And of course, we made our paint mark so we know which side is which. I didn't mention the type of protectant I used. It's actually this product called Pre-Lube 6. But any type of preservative that's designed to prevent corrosion should be fine. Any of them are going to eventually wear off. The last thing we've got is to do the torque on these three, or these six rather. I mentioned earlier in the video that GM's torque for these is 65 foot-pounds. AM General is 66. Don't know why, but we're going to go with the 65. There's a couple of ways you can go about doing this. I'm going to show you two. One is you can take a brass tool and get it in between the flex plate and the bottom of the block. As you rotate this guy around, you can bring your torque wrench into position. You torque it that way. Another thing you can do is these Lisle tools work pretty good, although they're kind of cramped in this position I'm in, but they fit in to the ring gear on the outside. You hold them with one hand. You can bring your torque wrench down the other hand, and that's another way you can torque these up. But guys, we're done with this repair. We knocked out the main seal. We knocked out kind of the more rare leaking camshaft cover plug. That should take care of our leaks after we get the 4L80E remounted back on here. If you got some questions or you got some comments, go ahead and leave them below and I'll try to help. If you found this video useful or it saved you some time or money, I'd appreciate you tapping that like button, guys. And as always, thanks for watching.